if you question U.S. foreign policy, you might have to question like why you fought in the war and like sacrificed your youth and buried your friends for the sake of imperialist lies. And, we all know where you stand now. My question is, when did you start to question the wisdom and the morality of United States foreign policy? Was it during the global war on terror, the war in Ukraine? I was wondering if you could talk about like that process.
Yeah, sort of like my Enlightenment journey to the reality of, the context that we live in.
Kamala Harris's. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, actually, I mentioned this on the podcast the other day when I had an assignment with the Defense Intelligence Agency back in like the 2017 timeframe. I was doing work that had a lot to do with Guantanamo Bay. And I started to really question what was going on there. I mean, you can read the public court documents that are released about, the detainees that are there so you can do your own research and like understand why they're being held and so forth. Being in that environment, having that direct access to understand that a little bit more really made me started questioning things. It wasn't enough to like move me beyond just like asking these questions, like instinctually feeling uncomfortable with what I was reading and seeing that had happened from the moment of like having the black sites that were set up, the leaflets that were dropped in order to even capture these people that could have been involved in the 9/11 attacks and so forth. I mean, you know the story. So that's when I started following media outlets from all over the world. I hadn't done that before. And so this made me want to start knowing more about what was actually going on in other countries, not even only the Middle East, but I started following just other media outlets. Like I said, Ireland was one. And I'm talking about very local channels, not even like the TRT in Turkey. It would be like some local channel that I'd find, or some big ones in India, like WION. I mean, the Hindu Times. Like I just started following all these things because I just wanted to know what was going on from their perspective inside of their countries. So years and years passed, and I don't think anything drastically had happened since then, I guess, since 2017, with the exception of us pulling out of Afghanistan, which, as you know, is like horrendous in the way that they did it. Not that I think it was wrong that we did it. We should have been out of there way sooner. We should be out of there in total. The whole Middle East, we should not have any troops there. We shouldn't have like 80 bases across the globe. So that is sort of when internally, I started asking questions. But at the time, I was a single mother. I had a daughter that I had to like financially take care of. So I wasn't in a place, I guess, to be able to allow my questions to actually go further than just questions until October. After I started seeing, those images on these social media platforms that I had been following before, that's when I really woke up to, what's going on in the Middle East. But if you rewind a little bit more, my awakening to what's going on as far as like us being this military industrial complex that wages wars everywhere, that profits the elite, and we destroy communities, we destroy cultures, we destroy indigenous people, we destroy water, we destroy land. I mean, we destroy everything. That came to me more during what started happening in Ukraine. I started doing a lot of research about what the Donbas People's Republic had been requesting from the Ukrainian government, and just how divided the West and the East of Ukraine was, because people had been living underneath the Soviet Union for decades and decades. And so they identified themselves still at this point. I mean, it's only been 1990 is when they were, released from the Soviet Union. But I started realizing that this wasn't even about Russia and Ukraine so much as it was about this population of people that live in Ukraine that weren't being treated fairly by their own government, because they still identified as Russians, because they still supported the Russian culture, they still spoke Russian language, which Ukraine tried eliminating from public schools, and saying that they would cut funding to the public schools of that area if they didn't begin to start speaking in Ukrainian language. And so I was like, wait a second, something wasn't right here. So I did all my research. I figured it out. And then I started listening to what our senators say, which would be great if we could even have had a clip to show here, because our senators are not even hiding the fact that they want to shed Ukrainian blood over American blood. They don't even hide it. They say it. They are trying to degrade Russian capabilities through using Ukraine as a proxy. So we talk about proxies. Iran has proxies, Hezbollah, the Houthis, Hamas.
We have proxies.
We have proxies too.
Yeah.
It's like, just because the proxies we use are considered a sovereign state doesn't make it any different than the fact that we use proxies. We're borderline about to use Japan as a proxy against China. And they don't want that. The citizens do not even want us to have a military base there. Lincoln just went there and announced they're talking about building another base there. And it's like the people, the citizens don't want us there. We dropped nuclear bombs in their country. They don't want us there. So anyway, so all these things started happening. But the true awakening moment for me, that, all this led up to that, was following those social media outlets from these like thoughts that popped in my head in 2017 and being able to see the raw footage on the ground. That's when I was like, no way, I can't support this. Absolutely not.